Thank you for listening to Forever Shelfmates. As a small podcast, we rely on word of mouth and ratings to gain new listeners. If you like the show, please be sure to tell your friends, family, landlord, colleagues, anyone who will listen, and leave us a 5-star rating on the listening platform of your choice. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Forever Shelfmates, everybody. I'm Cheryl, and I love books, and I love to talk about the books that I read. And I'm a librarian, so I have a job where I get to talk about the books that I love to read. I'm here with my co-librarian and BFF, Mirala.
Aloha! Happy summer!
Woohoo! That's a very wonderful introduction. We're back again with another mystery novel. This time we're discussing The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Before we get started, our usual warning, we will be spoiling this book. So if you haven't read it and don't want to have the plot ruined for you, and there's a lot that we could ruin, pause this episode, run out to your favorite local indie bookstore or a library of some kind, and come back after you read it. Don't worry, we'll wait.
Shelfmates, shelfmates, reading books is what we do. Shelfmates, shelfmates, and we talk about them too.
I'm Cheryl. I like light and fluffy.
Meryl, I like dark, stuffy.
Shelfmates, shelfmates, we're so glad that you're here to hear us.
Let's dive in, shall we?
Should we do this episode in Southern accents in honor of the characters?
No.
Why not, Cheryl?
Well, they're not Southern, they're Texans, which is a specific brand of Southern.
I forgot. You did not listen to the audiobook version.
So
and in the audiobook version, all the fine Southern gentlemen have fine Southern accents.
That's awesome, but...
Right, Eris? Eris.
Oh, the nickname.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we should summarize the book first.
Let's
because
do it, Eris.
This is...
Sorry. I'm going to stop now.
It's also very hard to, understand a thick Southern accent if you're not used to it, which I'm not.
Shucks.
It must have taken a long time to get used to it while you were listening.
No, it didn't, because it was much better than the stupid thing I was just doing now.
So The Inheritance Games is actually a very convoluted, confusing, intricate, amazing novel, which I reread yesterday. So I have the plot fresh in my mind, but if you expect me to remember every little detail, you are going to be sorely disappointed, because there are so many things about this book that I just won't remember. And also you don't want me to remember, because it'll spoil the reading enjoyment of all of the little things that happen.
There's a lot of bits and pieces.
Yes. If you've ever read the book The Westing Game, this is similar.
Kind of. It's like, okay, The Westing Game is better. I have to put that out there.
I disagree.
No. The Westing Game is much better. It's much more sophisticated.
Disagree.
But this is kind of like the high school version of it. YA.
I read The Westing Game as an adult, and I like this one better. So we'll have to agree to disagree.
But we can also agree that my opinion is correct.
No, we can't do that. Sorry.
We could this time, though.
No, we're not
because it
going to.
actually is correct.
No, absolutely not. So the Inheritance Game starts out with our main character, Avery Kylie Grams. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. There's a silent B at the end of Grams, and it's actually kind of important that there's a silent B at the end of Grams. And she is a teenager. I think in New York City is where she's living, with her older sister as her guardian. Her mother has passed away from cancer, and she's playing poker to make money to pay rent, and playing chess with a homeless man in a park every morning, hoping to be able to buy him breakfast. And one day she goes to school and discovers she has inherited the... she doesn't find out that she's inherited. She finds out she's in the will of some eccentric billionaire in Texas that she's never met, and that she is required to go to Texas to hear the reading of the will, and is very confused because she doesn't know him. And
his name is Tobias Hawthorne.
Yes. And Tobias Hawthorne has died, and his children, his 2 daughters and his 4 grandsons, have been waiting to hear the will to figure out how much money they will all have.
Let me just point out, this is a YA novel, and this is where it gets stupid. The 4 grandsons are, of course, heartthrobs, right? This is where the Westing game is superior to the inheritance games. But we'll get into which son you think is the most attractive. I have a theory who you are the most attracted to. Yes.
Okay.
And also we'll play the game, which son are you?
All right, then. So the 4 grandsons are Nash, Grayson, Jameson, and Xander, and I got them in order of eldest to youngest. I did read this yesterday. And so at the reading of the will, they find out that they have basically all been essentially disinherited. They get very little money from the estate, somewhere around like $100,000 each. And when this guy has $46 billion to his name, getting $100,000 is kind of a slap in the face, I would think. Mm-hmm. And everything else is left to Avery. And so it's sort of like, I imagine they all kind of turn and look at her like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
And she has no idea. But there's a condition that to inherit, she has to live in Hawthorne house, because of course the house has to have a name, for a year in order to be able to inherit. So she's a little confused.
This is like the champion awkward turtle scenario.
What is the champion awkward?
Do you know awkward turtle when you do the thing with your hand? When there's an awkward, you don't know awkward turtle?
No, I don't.
All right, this is for the show notes. All right, look, you put your hands on top of each other. When somebody says something weird and your thumbs are opposing sides, when someone says something weird, you'll go awkward turtle and you make the little flippers go.
I have never heard of this.
Okay, well.
Is this something we should be doing in our everyday life?
I do it in my everyday life. You're welcome.
But not with me, do you?
I've mentioned it before, and I don't think you've paid close attention to me.
I'm now going to watch your hands every time I think I say something that you might find to be awkward or just weird.
Awkward turtle.
Oh, God.
Okay, so anyway, it's very awkward
Yeah.
for, not to mention dangerous for Avery, because
Now
all
she's
of a
a
sudden
target.
she's inherited all this money. Everybody is confused or resentful. Why on earth? Who's this random person? Especially the daughter of Tobias Hawthorne. She is just, we'll get into her.
Yes, there are 2 daughters, Sky and Zara, and Zara doesn't have any children, and Sky is the mother of all 4 of the grandchildren.
From different fathers.
Yes, but she is more of the how the heck have I not inherited this money kind. She's sort of the gold digger, if you will. Like, she's sort of the one who's the most upset about the fact that she didn't inherit millions. Avery also does not have the right to kick any of them out of the house, so she has to live in this house with all these people who hate her. Mm-hmm. And the house is a very intellectual, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very,
The house is like a giant maze.
Yes, it's interesting architecturally because there are lots of games and secrets about the house. So we should probably talk about Tobias Hawthorne and his obsession with games and riddles and puzzles.
Yeah. So he was obsessed with games and riddles. What?
I know you're gonna have to do that.
So he was obsessed with games and riddles and puzzles. So he raised his 4 grandsons. He was always having these mind contests with his grandsons where he would hide messages or try to have them decipher codes or solve riddles. And there are riddles hidden within the architecture of this house, which is, I pictured the house to be kind of dark wood. It's like a combination of a 1900s old-fashioned wooden house.
Like a Victorian.
Yeah, like
almost.
a Victorian, but also it's this weird combination because they also have some really high-tech features, like
there's
face recognition or fingertip recognition. It was strange.
Also, it has like a bowling alley and a full spa and a garage for like a bajillion cars.
Right. He kept building onto it. Like,
he just
every year he would build something else onto
Yes.
it.
And so there are lots of mysteries about the house, generally speaking. And so when she moves into this house, she's quite startled when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone says, "Pull the candlestick." And she's like, "Who's talking to me? Is it a ghost?" And it turns out it was one of the grandsons that's inside the secret passageway that leads to her bedroom. So it's a little weird.
Boo. And here we get to the 4 boys.
Well, and we also should say every one of the 4 boys and Avery got a letter from Tobias Hawthorne when the will is read. And Avery's just says, "Dearest Avery, I'm sorry," and then his initials. And each one of the boys, I think, have the same message, which they all think is some sort of riddle. So now they think that there's something more to the will than meets the eye, and they need to solve this mystery.
Yeah. And at the heart of the mystery will be, why on earth did Avery inherit all this money and we got shut out?
Yes.
And so that's the premise of the book. And there are some interesting side characters. So Avery has a sister named Libby, and Libby's boyfriend is abusive, and his name is Drake. And there's a whole subplot about Libby trying to stay away from Drake because he hit her, and Drake is trying to make up with her. And once Libby Libby moves into Hawthorne house because her sister is there. And so,
well, also she's Avery's legal
right.
guardian.
Yeah, and she's Avery's legal guardian. And when she moves in, then there's the thought, well, maybe Drake is going to want a cut of the money, and maybe he's going to make an appearance. And guess what? He does.
Well, it's also unclear. So when they talk about the will and how it's all dealt with, because the first thing is of course that the heirs are going to challenge the will. This random nobody comes out of nowhere and is like, "Oh, I've just inherited $46 billion," and the rest of the family's like, "Okay, cool, sure." No. So the lawyers basically say, "Well, he wrapped it up real tight, so if any of you try to challenge the will, you then receive nothing. And if anything happens to her, to Avery, you still receive nothing." So it's made clear that in no way will the family inherit, but there is a question of what happens if something happens to Avery, which there's also a side plot where somebody tries to kill Avery.
Right. Things do happen to Avery in this house.
Yes. And so the question sort of is, if Avery dies, what happens to the $46 billion?
And also, who's trying to shoot at her or run her car off the road?
Yeah.
You know, is it one of the 4 dashing gentlemen? Oh, can we get to them already?
So are we spoiling the ending of the book?
Okay, let's spoil the ending of the book, because the ending really redeemed this book.
But you
in
have
my
to remember
opinion.
that so a warning to all of our amazing listeners out there: read the book, because there's so much intricate. We'll talk about how Jennifer Lynn Barnes was an insane planner in this book, because there are so many little things in there that twists and turns, and you think this person's behind it and this person's behind it, and this clue leads to this thing. So there's a lot of stuff that you should read the book.
And she has really excellent character development.
Oh no, she's amazing.
I feel like I say that with every book we read, but
Oh, we're going to talk about Jennifer Lynn Barnes, because she's kind of amazing,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about her a little bit later. But so the end of the book, you find out that Drake has been in league with the grandson's mother, Sky, to kill Avery, because theoretically Avery's heirs would inherit the money, which is her sister Libby, and Drake feels that Libby would give him the money because
right.
abusive
and that was
boyfriend.
totally, I have to say, that was just so far-fetched. That whole thing with Drake, even Sky as a character, she's this caricature of an evil Southern lady. I mean, the whole scene with her naked in the bathtub and giving Avery life advice. It was just that you had to suspend your belief. Well, I guess you have to suspend disbelief. You have to do that for much of this book, which you don't have to do in the Westing Game, but you do have to do for this book.
Can we not compare it to the Westing Game? Because I feel like we're going to do that. I'm going to keep saying but.
All right.
And let's just talk what we liked and didn't like about this book without comparing it to the other book. Anyway, so Sky was in league with Drake to kill to kill Avery, but that it doesn't happen. Avery survives. Nothing really happens. I mean, Drake gets arrested, and Sky, like, nothing really happens. I mean, she's a rich white lady. Nothing really happens to her. She gets kicked out of the house.
She does get kicked out by Grayson. And
her son kicks her out.
And eventually, Avery and the boys, but it's really Avery, solves whatever riddle Hawthorne was
the
pointing.
riddle of the will.
Yeah, they solve it. They end up in this room where they all have to put their fingerprints up because there's fingerprint ID.
It was handprint.
Or it's handprint.
Handprint.
And then they each receive messages that basically explain what is going on, more or less. But the big twist at the end is my favorite thing ever, where we learn that the homeless man she was playing chess with in the park is actually Tobias Hawthorne's thought to be deceased son. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my God. I almost screamed when I read that.
He's alive.
He's alive, and he's the homeless man. I did not see that coming.
So Tobias Hawthorne actually had 3 children, the 2 daughters, Sky and Zara, and a son, Tobias Hawthorne II, who had presumed to, I think it's like blow up in some kind of like boating accident.
Yeah.
And so they think he's dead, but not all of them think he's dead because the body was never recovered. And you find out at the end that Avery has been playing chess with him in the park.
Dun, dun, dun. And that really made me want to read the second book, but I never read the second book of a series.
That's sad. We can talk about the sequel. I have read the sequel, and the third one comes out the end of August 2022. So depending on when you're listening to this, depending on when you're listening to this, it could be out already.
Right.
So you may have a complete trilogy to read. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't like to read series until they're complete, that is when the series will be complete.
What kind of person is that? Then you miss out on a lot of things.
Then you miss out on waiting a year from like the mic drop moment to like picking it back up.
Right.
I prefer it. I don't wait, but I prefer to read them all at once because, I hate the waiting. I'm not a patient person. I don't know if you know that about me.
What? Really?
I'm not patient at all.
I think you're pretty patient.
No.
And speaking of patient, I've been really patient because all I want to talk about are these 4 boys.
Okay, but then we're going to have to talk about the things I didn't like about the book first.
Okay, should we talk about the things we didn't like?
No, we should talk about the things we did like.
Oh,
we should always start the positive, right?
Positive. The twist at the ending. Oh my God. The homeless guy was his son. That was so creepy and amazing.
You also find out how Tobias Hawthorne Sr. met Avery because she doesn't think she's ever met him in her life and has no understanding of why he would leave her this fortune. And it becomes clear at the end that he met her when she was young. And it's very, very interesting because it doesn't really have anything to do with her at all. It's that her name, Avery Kylie Grams, is really great for an anagram he wants to make. And it's like, really,
And what
dude?
was the anagram? A very
risky gamble.
A very risky gamble.
Which ends up being part of the ending when they find the answers in the secret room, is this anagram. They have to put the anagram together.
Right. We never find out what the gamble is. Is it that he was giving all the money to her? Probably he was giving all the money to her. And we didn't even talk about the main point of all this. The point of him giving all the money to her, part of it was that he wanted the 4 boys to reconcile with each other. They had been torn apart over this girl who died. Her name was Emily, and several of them were in love with her. And then Emily dies, and 2 of the brothers blame themselves over her death, and it had caused a lot of strife among the brothers. And so part of this giant riddle that Avery is taking part of is to reconcile the brothers and have them become a family again.
Which is interesting given that some of the code and stuff, like, that had to have been done before the girl died. So the girl dies like a year before the book takes place. But some of these clues he left around the house have been around for, you would think, a lot longer than a year. So I'm kind of curious if that means that there's more at play here than just reconciling the boys after Emily's death.
There's much more because there's 3 books to the series at least. And
no, I think the third one's the final one.
The final one? Okay.
So.
Okay, another thing that I really liked.
Okay.
The creepy part where Avery is doing, I think she's doing a press conference, and her quote unquote friend from school, who's not really her friend, has her do her hair to look exactly like the dead girl Emily's hair.
It wasn't the press conference, it's when they go to the gala, which she's doing because she had an impromptu press conference. Right. And they're like, well, if you're ready to do press conferences, you're ready to like step out into the world as the heiress of the Hawthorne fortune. So the quote unquote friend dresses her up exactly like the dead girl, and the brothers are like, oh my God, and they freak out.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the point, but I just thought that was so like creepy and horrible. And
yeah, that's kind of terrifying a little bit.
Yeah. So there were some interesting twists that way. That's what I liked. Some of the puzzles were really cool, like especially the one with the light beams going through the window. There was one where like the light had to shine in a particular way through the window. It was really, really subtle.
Yeah. I've been rewatching the series Alias, which was one of my favorite shows, like in the early 2000s. And there's a scene in Alias where like you have to look at like this. It's sort of exactly the same. You have to look through like the stained glass window at this exact hour to get the clue. And it's sort of the same. National Treasure uses the same kind of thing. Like you have to find the right place at the right time, and that's the whole thing about daylight savings and Ben Franklin. Is this crazy? Have you seen these?
I don't watch the telly.
Ever?
Not much.
Well, I mean, not like now, but like
in my prior years?
Yeah.
No, because do you know, in college I lived in a hippie commune and we didn't have a television.
I feel okay.
So I'm really not good in the TV realm of things, but it's something I aspire to work towards.
I aspire to watch TV less and read more books, like I need to do that. The things I loved about this book. So first of all, I love a book that has puzzles in it. And we will recommend a bunch of our favorite puzzle books on the Instagram. So make sure to follow us, because we'll definitely post that. Because I just love it when there's clues and you have to solve. I mean, I used to be really into mysteries too. And this is a mystery, duh.
This is your jam.
But this used to be like the one, the one genre I used to read so much, because I just love trying to be able to figure it out. And yesterday's was a reread. I can't remember if I figured it out when I read it the first time. So I don't remember. I can't remember if I figured it out. But I love trying.
Really impressed if you figured it out the first time.
I wouldn't have figured out how he knew Avery, but the figuring out who was trying to kill Avery, like that, I think I could have. So, I mean, that seems fairly obvious, the whole book, that it's Drake wanting the money. Mm-hmm. But I definitely wouldn't have been able to solve the puzzle of how Tobias Hawthorne met Avery, why he left her the money. I mean, that's still not really solved at the end of the book.
Right.
And then the final twist at the end is that the youngest son, Xander, is given, you need to go now find Tobias Hawthorne II. And little does he know that Avery knows him. So that leads us into book 2, The Hawthorne Legacy, which I've also read. I love books that have puzzles in it. So I really love that. Jennifer Lynn Barnes is amazing. This is not the first book of hers that I've read. She does great character development, as you said. And so it's just a really fun, enjoyable read. It's something you're gonna be able to not put down.
It's chapters. A candy read. It's like candy.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not saying candy in a disparaging way. I love candy. Okay, let's talk about the boys. We all like the boys, right?
I do like the boys, but let's start talking about what we didn't like. The things I didn't like about this book. Okay, so you're going to be really surprised. I hated the romance in this book, which, I mean, talk about a jaw-dropping, Cheryl doesn't like romance? Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Cheryl lives for romance. That's all she likes. Finding a book for Cheryl that doesn't have romance in it is real challenging. But here's the thing. I love the boys. I love them as people. I don't love that they, I didn't like their relationship with Avery in the romantic sense.
It
drove me nuts.
100% with you. I felt that the hints of romance among all the boys, they drove me crazy. It was not necessary. So I'm with you on this.
It was absolutely unnecessary, and I actually would have liked it more if they had come to sort of respect each other as people who are in this scenario together, more like cousins, or like have that be the result of their relationship at the end. It was really weird when like Avery and Jameson are having these like romantic moments, and then Avery's having these romantic moments with Grayson also, and I'm just like, and it mirrored the relationship with Emily, because Emily, the girl who died, had a relationship with both Grayson and Jameson and sort of played them against each other, and it was not healthy. And I sort of looked at this as like take two, and in fact in the end Grayson's like, Avery, we can't do whatever this is because I've seen the way my brother looks at you, and I can't have another Emily scenario on my hands. And I'm just like, could you guys just not?
Just don't. Yeah, it made me groan.
Not.
I love the boys. I agree with you. I love the boys, but I couldn't stand.
And maybe it'd be different if this was like the third book in the series and they had time to get to know each other, but this book happens in the few weeks after she finds out that she's a bajillionaire, and so she doesn't even know them, and she comes into their house and uproots their whole lives and uproots her own life, and so much change that it's just like, I mean, maybe that not poor decision making that she, kisses him, but it just didn't feel like it was like they don't even know each other.
Yeah,
and
it
so
felt
she's
tacked on. It was like, oh, this is a YA novel,
so there has to be romance
we
in
need
it.
to stick this in. And I felt that way also about the abusive boyfriend. I felt like that could have been a book in and of itself. Like, I feel like Jennifer Lynn Barnes really wanted to make a statement about domestic abuse, and that's great and that's fine, but it felt really tacked on. It stretched my belief that what's her name, Skye, would hire Drake to kill Avery, and just everything about the Drake side story felt tacked on to me, and it wasn't integral to the plot.
So I did some research on Jennifer Barnes, because she is actually really amazing, because not only does she write YA novels, and I think at this point this is book 20 or 21 or something, but she's also a professor of psychology at the University of Oklahoma, and she does research on how books affect people's minds. Like, this is all what her research is the science of fiction. And so on the way to recording, I was listening to an interview she did where she talked about her process and the things she's learned through her day job that has helped influence her writing. And so one of the things that she said, which is fascinating, is that she keeps a list of all of the things she loves about the books that she reads. And so when she has the opportunity, she just puts them in her book. So it may be that she loves the idea of, one of the things...
Abusive boyfriends?
Well, there was one thing on the list where she was like, I love it when siblings are guardians of their siblings. And I was like, oh, yeah, I definitely saw that in this book, because Libby is her guardian. And I think she needed a villain. Because in a book like this, who was really the villain? Because Skye knew she wouldn't inherit if anything happened to Avery. Mm-hmm. And so it had to look like she wasn't involved, and who better to do that than the money-grubbing ex-boyfriend, right? So, I don't 100% disagree that, some of the stuff with Drake felt tacked on, but I do think that there needed to be, an actual villain. And there really, with all the other characters, there was nobody that was really able to be the face of evil.
I guess not, but I have to say, when I met Nash, I thought, oh, here's a bad boy.
Really, Nash?
Yes, Nash.
But
you don't
Nash
get that vibe?
No, but Nash is the one who gathers up all the lost souls and gives them work and takes care of them.
But he's also the guy who kind of rejected his upbringing and dresses weird and
what's wrong with that? He doesn't want the money and
I don't know. I got sketchy vibes from him, but maybe also it was the accent on Audible. Nash is the bad boy. Then you have Grayson.
No, I'm sorry, Jameson is the bad boy.
No, Jameson is not the bad boy. Jameson is whatever. He's just romantic and
he
he's
is
a middle kid, and
he is completely a complete mess.
Well, Grayson is like the typical oldest. He's not the oldest.
I know,
that's
this is the thing. He's not the oldest.
He has a lot of.
He's type A.
He's type
He's
A.
type A.
Yeah, he's very type A. And then Xander is the fun-loving.
I loved Xander when he blows up his robots. He hands her like a dragon robot, and he's like, "Here, just hold this." And she's like, "What the heck is this thing?" Oh my! I loved Xander.
Yeah, he's quirky.
And he's also the only one who's not, like, it's very clear that they're all competitive, especially with each other, but it's like amplified to like the nth degree between Jameson and Grayson, and Nash is kind of like doing his own thing, and Xander doesn't need to compete. Right. He is brilliant. He has patents. He invested all of his money really early on in cryptocurrency and then sold it for like $100 billion or something. So like, I loved that he was part of it, but also not part of it. And you sort of find out that he's been sort of pushing them into the game so that they can reconcile. I loved him.
Is he your favorite?
I would probably say, yeah, he's my favorite of the four boys.
I'm trying to, it's been so long since I read this book that I'm trying to remember what was so messed up about Jameson. I mean, he calls her heiress. He's very flirtatious. Yeah, he's very competitive.
Yeah, he says it himself, he's very driven on like the thing that drives him. And so these puzzles have been the thing that drives him.
Right. And he can be emotionally absent. Like he can be so focused on his goal that he neglects to think about other people's feelings.
Or like anything. Like I feel like he doesn't, like I feel like he's one of those people that like wouldn't eat or doesn't sleep much and stuff because he's just so focused on like whatever it is. And in this case, it's the puzzles and solving the riddles, and he's just very, very driven.
Who's the most attractive, Cheryl? Is it Nash or Grayson?
I mean, obviously I'm going to go for Grayson over Nash because I don't like the bad boys in terms of their looks usually. Although the motorcycle's kind of cute, so I don't know.
Which boy are you?
You know what I was thinking before we came here? Is that, you know, like you always come with like your outline, like the things you want to say, and I come with literally nothing and just word vomit whatever it is I'm gonna say. Like I have no plan in my head of what we're gonna talk about, but like I feel like in my day job I'm very like focused, like here's my list of things that have to get done and here's when they have to get done. And I think you're more of the like I show up at work and we have fun and we do this and we do that. And I just figured like when we come here it's like the exact opposite, and I kind of love that. But like, so like of course I think Grayson is the best.
So wait, I think so Grayson at work you're saying you're Grayson and I'm Xander, and here I'm Grayson and you're Xander?
No, I think Nash. I'm more Jameson.
You're
at
Jameson.
Work. I think I'm a combination between Grayson and Jameson at work. And when I come here, I'm more of a combination of Xander and Nash because I don't blow things up when I'm here, but I definitely don't come with a plan. Yeah. And I'm definitely not like ready to go. Like I finished the book last night. Yeah. And I really almost texted you and said, I'm not sure I'm going to make it.
Well, you can also do things like teach on the fly, which I can't do. I'm not good at teaching on the fly.
Prep work. You know, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. So for library stuff, I prep. And for this, I'm just, here I am.
Here you are.
Let's
and
just
it's
talk.
Awesome. Yay.
I'm doing like jazz hands.
No,
Let's do some razzle dazzle.
You should be practicing your awkward turtle hands.
But I haven't said anything really awkward turtle, have I? Since the awkward turtle moment.
You haven't. Maybe you should say something awkward.
That puts me on the spot. I need more planning time to do something about that.
I can say something awkward.
Okay.
But.
All right, so what else didn't you like about the book?
Oh my God. Okay.
I do love that song.
That was highly nerdy.
I love Razzle Dazzle. You're just a bagel.
Okay, here's what I didn't like. I'm just a bagel. Okay, here's what I didn't like. I get the point that the pieces of furniture move. I get that. I get the point that they move, and I guess I get the point that things unlock and relock and that things go click. I get that. I don't need you to write about that constantly. I mean, that got tiresome. Yes, I understand the bureau moved to the left, and then you turn the wheel counterclockwise, and then the thing went click, and then the other thing went ding, and then the shelf pulled back, and then we saw whatever it is. Just tell me what you saw.
So you just want less sound effects, is what you're saying?
I mean, it was a little tedious.
All right,
that
so
part.
no sound effects from your
No, we can have sound effects. It's just the whole thing with, Jennifer Lynn Barnes is going to list 20 different steps about how the furniture moved.
She's building anticipation.
Okay, well, enough already, because you're going to lose me. And sometimes you did lose me. I'm lost.
Yeah, but you kept reading, so.
I did keep reading. Well, I had to.
You didn't have to.
I had to.
You could have come here and been like, this book sucked and I didn't want to read it, so I stopped.
Is that even an option? I mean, I didn't think it sucked. But just going forward, is that an option for us? Because I don't think it is. That's why I made you read Slaughterhouse-Five. Because I knew you would not be able to stop, because you have to do it for the show.
Fine.
So those are the things that I found kind of annoying. Oh yeah, at the end, Grayson pledges loyalty to Avery. And that just seemed random. I couldn't understand why. After all they've been through, all of a sudden, he pledges his loyalty to her and he kicks his mom out of the house. What the heck is going on?
His mom did try to kill her. I think there are limits to anyone's love for their neglectful parents.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to suddenly swing in the opposite direction of pledging his loyalty. I couldn't understand what brought that about.
I think he just realized that she wasn't going to give up. She wasn't going to get kicked out. There was not much he could do to convince her to leave. I mean, that was part of the beginning, is they wanted her to leave, thinking that I think it would change the stipulations of the will before they realized that the stipulations of the will were, the stipulation was that the money would go to charity if Avery left or didn't inherit. And I think he learned to respect her. She stood up and she defended her sister. She went to the gala, even though she definitely didn't want to. She showed up at school and faced down all the people that talked about her, essentially in front of her face, about what they felt was, her gold-digging ways, because how else did she inherit that money other than having some kind of inappropriate relationship with this old guy or something. Like, she really became, I think, more formidable at the end. She put up with the brothers. She helped them sort of like reconcile in a way. So I think he respected her at the end. And I'm not sure it was like undying like pledge of loyalty. I think it was just that I'm gonna have your back. I'm going to have your back when people try to kill you for money they're definitely never going to inherit. And I would hope that if one of my parents tried to kill somebody, I'd probably kick them out of the place where that person was living, right? Like, you shouldn't have to make somebody live in the same house with their attempted murderer. Just saying. Has that ever happened? That, like, would you want to live in a house with somebody who had tried to murder you?
I guess not.
So, I mean, I don't think that, like, and I'm going to say that, like, I've read book 2, and the relationship, you find out the relationship between Avery and Grayson deepens, not, I don't believe, in a romantic way, but you find out more about Grayson, and because you don't know anything about the boys' parents. I mean, you know about the mother, but you don't know anything about their fathers. They don't even know who their fathers are. They don't even know where their middle names came from. And so you find out more about Grayson's father in book 2. You also find out more about Tobias Hawthorne II in book 2. And I haven't read the third one. I went to go get it last night to read it, and I am out of luck of getting an advanced reader copy. So I'm going to have to wait like everybody else to the end of August to read the final chapter.
We come upon a free ARC at ALA.
I don't think our listeners know what ALA is.
The American Library Association Conference. You did manage to get an ARC preview of Neil Shusterman's The Toll.
Yes, this was many years ago, before The Toll had been released, and I kind of like...
You flipped out over that.
I did.
I am willing to bet you'll be able to do that this time around.
We'll see. If I get one, wonderful listeners, I will post a picture of it on our Instagram, at Forever Shelfmates, the number 4, Ever Shelfmates. So be sure to follow us so you can see if I do manage to wrangle one out of some of the publishers who will be in attendance at the American Library Association conference.
Whee! Which we're going to. Exciting.
I'm very excited. Yay!
Yay!
All right, any last thoughts about this book? No?
Not really.
I loved her other things, so if you like this type, if you've read this book and you like it, I definitely recommend going back and reading her series, The Naturals, which is about...
Oh, she wrote The Naturals.
She did write The Naturals,
Okay.
which is about a book of teen, very genius level teens who profile serial killers for the FBI. It's great. I also really enjoyed her book, The Fixer, which is a political thriller, which if you ever liked the show Scandal, is sort of like the teen version of Scandal. She fixes political messes for high school students that are children of political figures. It's great. I think she's a good writer, and I really have enjoyed her work.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I enjoyed this. I thought it was entertaining. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world. I like the Weston game more, but I did have a good time with this.
Excellent.
And I think that I am Xander.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Kaboom!
I honestly, I would agree with that. You are Xander. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's all we have for you about The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Be sure to stay tuned when our next episode drops on August 1st. Thank you so much for listening. Forever Shelfmates is produced in collaboration with an incredible team of people. Our logo was designed by Mirla Casus and Miriam Goldell. Our theme song was written by Mirla Casus and Noah Osofsky and was performed by Abbi Waxman. Our producer is Aaron Adams, Benevolent Overlord, and our show is hosted by Mirla Casus and me, Cheryl Fox Strasberg. That's all we have for you this time. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Forever Shelfmates, that's the number 4, Ever Shelfmates, for the most up-to-date news on production. Next time, we'll be reading and discussing The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abbi Waxman. Thank you for listening.